A question for you. Who in this audience grew up with the thick, heavy volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica? What about the heavy Webster Dictionary? Now we have automatic spelling check, we have Turnitin, Google, Wikipedia, all very fast-moving and readily available to the touch of our fingers. No need for any shelves, no dusting required. We know that knowledge is power. We know that knowledge transforms. So let's listen to Professor Austin Choi-Fitzpatrick, who will tell us how to create new knowledge and share it by building a living book. Welcome, Professor Austin Choi-Fitzpatrick.
I love books. I actually love books, their actual physicality. I love deckled edges, and I love dust jackets. Whenever I write a book or I read a book, I always grab it and wrap it around and look at it and feel it, get a feel for the heft of the thing. I love books. But I also love that what books contain are ideas, and that these are ideas that course around the world and have upended institutions and overthrown empires. I love books' actual bricky bodies, their physicality. I love that. I love the way they feel in my pocket or the way they feel in my bag. But I also love that inside each book is an idea, there's a node and a circuit and great global conversations. Now, in the world that I come from, we call these big conversations the literature. We call these big conversations, disciplines. But right here in universities is where these books get written. Here we are in university. I'm a social scientist, and this is the kind of place where scientists on a regular basis are at work weaving ideas together. And if you look close at this tapestry that we're weaving here, if you get really, really close, you can see that each strand is an idea. And each one of those ideas is inside a book or an article that has been carefully written, carefully reviewed, and carefully sent out into the world. Carefully, so it can be another stitch in this large tapestry of human knowledge, this knowledge-generating enterprise that universities represent. This is what universities have been doing for time out of mind. And that the way that we write books has also gone relatively unchanged for centuries in some cases. Here's how books are made. Here's how actually my last book was made. I had a question about how it is that human rights violators feel about being targeted by social movements. So I went out and I asked them, what's it like to be you? What's changed around here? I gathered this data, wrote it in my notebook, and I came back onto campus, went into a silent library, and I wrote a book all by my lonesome. Then I sent the book off to the publisher, and the publisher sent it to another academic, reading all by their lonesome in a silent library, who reviewed it, an expert, a peer reviewer, industry standard. And then they recommended some changes, I made those changes, and the book was published, and now it sits bound somewhere in the library like this, waiting to be pulled off. I hope it gets pulled off the shelf. Please, somebody pull the book off the shelf. This is how books have been written for a long, long time. But I want to talk to you today about a series of experiments that I've been running over the last couple of years and into the next few years about changing and fundamentally democratizing the way we think about gathering the data that goes into books, analyzing that data, and then sharing that data out with the world. These are a series of experiments that have sort of clustered loosely around a new book of mine called The Good Drone. It's about how new technology balances power between the powerful and the powerless. That's what the book is about. But I'm not here talking to you about what the book is about. I'm talking to you about the series of experiments that we're running over the course of the production of this book. The first thing that we did is with a group of graduate students right here at the Kroc School, we scraped the open web for reports on how drones have been used for pro-social good. That's one of the ideas that's inside this book that I hope to add to that warp and weft as a stitch in that tapestry of knowledge. But that's not the point. The point is that as an entire team, we scraped the open web for this information. And then we wrote a report that went into a data set and a report that sits at an open repository right here at the library. And anybody can go and open up this report and validate and check any of our findings, come to different conclusions, debate with us. We've opened up the source data for this book. Then I sat down and I wrote a book. I wish there was another way to do this than going into a silent library, Carol, and just writing a book. It's hard work. It's got to be done. I don't know how to get around it. And I also don't know how we get around the peer review process, where other experts in the field tell me what I need to change, and I say, okay, I'll change it. And I go and I make these changes. These are important quality control measures. These are important steps, but I want to tell you what happened next. After that expert review, that peer review, it went out to a novel, open, public review, which meant that anyone with an internet connection could point out where I had gotten things wrong. Anyone with an internet connection in Excel could look at our data, look at our findings, look at what I had written in the book, and make suggestions. Not a lot of people did that. More people said, I read this thing and I don't understand what you were saying. Could you be clearer? That was very helpful for me because I heard from publics and not just my peers about what would actually make for a book that they actually wanted to read, that might get pulled off the shelf slightly more often. And then the book, as it's going to press in a few months, will actually be its bricky body on a shelf, together with all these other books, and again, I hope it gets pulled off the shelf. But it will also be a free open access PDF on the day that it's published. This means that, again, anyone with an internet connection can download the free PDF. You can go buy it if you want. You can buy it, the royalties will come to me. But you can download it for free, and none of the royalties will come to me or to my publisher. We could talk about what the publisher thinks about all this as well. It's an experiment. Did I say this is an experiment? Yes, this is an experiment. So you can download this book for free. Now, there's a number of terms for what we've done here. This has been called open science. This has been called public review. This has been called open access. But across each one of these stages is a commitment to fundamentally democratizing the process of getting data, analyzing data, and letting it out into the world. It's about democratizing that process of adding these stitches into the large fabric and this large tapestry of human knowledge. So this story that I've just told you brings us right up until this very moment, the moment where this book ends up on a bookshelf. You're able to pull it down physically if you're like me and you like holding it in your hands, or if you're like many of my colleagues, you want the PDF or the EPUB version that you read on your device. That brings us to the moment where you get to read what I wrote. I'm the writer, I am the author, and you are the reader. This is something that has gone unchanged for millennia. If you don't like what I've written, you disagree with it, you see something different in the data that you think needs to be emphasized, and you're a scholar, you can send your rebuttal out. It can get peer-reviewed, and it can get published right alongside mine. And maybe somebody will pull your book and my book off and read them both. Maybe, I can dream. But that's the conversation. I'm the author, and you are the reader. This is something I'm working on fundamentally upending, and the reason I'm talking to you all today. Because together with a team of folks at MIT, we're working on launching a living version of the book. A living version of the book that fundamentally makes key efforts to democratize this process even further. Here's what that means. The first thing we're doing is we're building a website that will capture all of the information about how the book has been received, how it's been received by my peers, how it's been received by the public, how it's getting talked about on Twitter, how it's getting reviewed in the press. The good, the bad, and the ugly, we're going to wrap all of that information around the book itself. So you can read the book and then zoom out and see how it's being talked about. This is the equivalent of giving a heads-up display for that stitch that I'm hoping this book represents in the warp and weft of that great tapestry of knowledge. It allows anyone to zoom out and then say, well, that's fine, but what do other people think? Now, my deepest fear, you might imagine, is that this is blank and empty and that nobody's talking about the book, right? That would be an interesting thing for readers to know as well. This is not something that's being talked about. So this is a fundamentally, possibly epistemically humiliating. There's epistemic humility here about maybe nobody reads it. We're going to find out in really short order. But it's fundamentally honest about the sort of material and ideas that I'm sending out into this larger ecosystem. So, second thing we're going to do with this living book platform is we are then going to open up a new version of the book to be edited. Which means you can download that data set that I mentioned that's at the library, you can rerun the data, and you can say, I got my facts wrong, and then you can log in and fix them. So whether it comes down to data and fact-checking what I've written, or reanalyzing and reinterpreting some of my interpretations, or if you, as the reader, come to something that sure seemed obvious to me as I wrote this in California, but you know is not true in Kansas, you can log in and you can change it. Now, this raises a host of questions. Should we only allow peers, experts, to make these changes in this next version of the book? Should we let the public, everyone and anyone, make changes? What if the book gets worse? What if it gets better? We can step back another step and ask, should we invite not just people, but our algorithms and artificial intelligence to change the book? Should we set algorithms out to scrape the web for better data and update this book on the fly as changes emerge? And if so, who's the author? Do I have to share authorship of some future version of this book with a bot? I have no idea. Every step of this process, from the open scraping of this data on the open web, to the open data on the repository here at the library, to this open public review, to the open access version, to the heads-up display on the book's reception, to this this new version that's going to be able to be changed and I hope evolve over time. I've done all of this with one core commitment, which is a commitment to open society, and a commitment to knowledge that actually helps transcend borders, to knowledge that includes more voices, that brings more voices and more questions into the tapestry that are more representative of who we are, who we want to be. I think this fundamentally serves our goals here at the Kroc School of building positive peace, because it brings more voices into this conversation and adds new stitches in new ways. So I'm very, very excited about this process, even though I don't know where it's going. I framed this as an experiment because it really is. There's really, really big questions that need to get answered. Like, how should we build this actual framework? Who should we let edit this? How do we do quality control? Who gets authorship? If an algorithm does better work than me, please no, please no. These are some of the questions we're going to have to wrestle with. And I don't know the answers to those questions. In fact, taking a step back, if I'm really honest with you all, I don't even know what all the questions are. But I'm positive that the role of the university moving forward, as we head into an uncertain future in which humans are working alongside technology that's more powerful than ever before, I'm convinced that these are the sorts of questions we have to be asking, and that the university is the best place to be asking them, because it fundamentally is the anchor place for where we generate this new knowledge as a society, and that's a role we should continue to pursue, and leadership we should continue to pursue from here moving forward. Thank you.